Hello and welcome to another open source workplace video. Today I'm very excited to introduce you to Rich Berliner. Rich is the founder of 5th Gen Media and the publisher of the Connected Real Estate magazine. Rich, how you doing? And thank you for joining us today.
I'm great, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And you're bringing a knowledge base that really has been missing from the channel. So I am excited to hear your views and given your experience on that connectedness and the connectivity in the workplace, I'm looking forward to diving into these conversations with you over the coming weeks. So thank you. I appreciate it.
So I appreciate you having me. I'm very interested in what's going on your end. I've watched what you've done with the Open Source Workplace website and your broadcasts here, and it's impressive. I have to
Thank you, man. Thank you. No, I appreciate it. We always like those kind of words. So thank you, Rich. So obviously, we've been in lockdown for 6-7 weeks, whatever it is now. It sort of feels like it just keeps rolling on with, we don't know where the end is in sight, so to speak. But, as we look back, what do you wish you knew before we went into lockdown? Is there one thing, personally or business that wise you think you'd like to have known?
Yeah, I'll be honest, Steve. I didn't see this coming that we would wind up in lockdown. But the old saying, sometimes it's better to be lucky than smart, and I think that's my moniker here. So we did a live event in Florida that kind of snuck in right before the end of all this in Fort Lauderdale, and it was a really successful event. We did kind of everything that we wanted to get out in terms of panels and discussions with real industry leaders in the commercial real estate space. And then everything kind of ground to a halt. And one of my members of my team, Aaron Friedman, came to me with this platform and said, why don't we do a virtual event? And it kind of kicked us into gear to think about doing a virtual event that we did last week. And it was really very kind of prescient for us to be thinking about a virtual event. We kind of snuck in as the first one of the virtual events. Now you're going to see them all over the place. But again, just because of the luck of the Irish here, I don't think I would have done anything very much different. And it worked out well. So, this has been a kind of, we see everybody around us who are losing their jobs and they're, laid off and things. And so in some ways, I feel very lucky that we were able to continue, keep our people working, and also bring the information that we're, we see our charter to bring this information about connectivity to commercial real estate folks and to help the guys in the wireless and the tech space connect with them. And so that's really the long and the short of it. I wish I had one thing to tell you that I wish I had sold that stock or something like that, but it's really been sort of a tale of luck rather than smarts.
No, and that's great, Rich, because I think there is two mindsets, right? There's the mindset to put your head in the sand and go, what's going on in the world and what are we going to do? But you actually went the other way, right? You saw an opportunity and you were innovative and you were quick and you were mobile and well done you. And obviously your event was very successful. Attendees were high, and obviously those who participated were very pleased with the outcome. So well done you, and well done Connected Real Estate Magazine and 5th Gen Media. So as I said before, as we were discussing, you're in a field that I struggle to understand intently. I am a workplace professional. What I focus on is, what do our employees need in the workplace? What designs do they need? What functions and tasks, and break it down those components. And obviously, to get a lot of that information, I rely on data. So data can come in many forms, be it through sensors, be it through observation. But actually, whenever we think about that sensor data and everything else behind it, it all relies on connectivity. So as I said before, I'm really looking forward to digging into some of these conversations. And there's one specific technology that you mentioned to me as we were sort of prepping for this, and even before your show went live, that I'd never heard of before. So I kind of want to dig into that a little bit with you. And it was CBRS. So Rich, what is CBRS?
Thanks, sir. Leading into that, it's a great question. So CBRS isn't the technology, it's a frequency band. And the government, in looking at what's going on with connectivity and broadband and all those things around in our country today, realized that they were underutilizing a lot of the frequency bands. Again, this stuff, was given out by the FCC over many, many, many decades. And the FCC started to kind of go through the files, if you will, and look and say, we've got this frequency band that's being underutilized. So this is the 3.5 to 3.7 frequency band that's used primarily by the Navy. And the Navy, obviously, whereas the Navy's on the coasts. Navy's not, putting battleships up and down the Mississippi River. It's on the coast. So this frequency band was underutilized. Occasionally, the Navy would use it. And what the FCC decided to do was to go out to sort of the industry and say, is there a way we could do this? We could use this frequency band, but we're not going to impede the Navy from continuing to do what they want to do. And if they're not using it, then it's free for you to use. If they're using it, they get preemption. And so a group of technologists from the industry kind of put together, if you recall back in the PBX days, you didn't have, if you had 300 people in the office, you didn't have 300 phone lines anymore. You had 30 phone lines. And when someone pressed a button and was looking for a line, they could hit that button and it gave them a line, not necessarily the same line they always use. And that's the way CBRS sort of works, that you get a frequency, that a channel, if you will, that you can then use. And if the Navy wants to preempt, they can do that. But by and large, this is an underutilized set of frequencies. So CBRS is also unlicensed, so that a commercial real estate owner can use this in their building on an unlicensed basis to run their private communications network. Nowadays, new phones are coming out so that they have CBRS frequencies in them so that you can make a call and receive a call on a CBRS frequency. And so it's really kind of jacked everybody up to start using this and saying, how could I do what I need to do from collecting data from my IoT devices? How could I do it as a private network? How could I use it for advertising? And the first real use case that we focused in on is a signage case at the American Dream Entertainment Center. I've been absolutely banned from calling it a mall. You can't call this a mall. But the American Dream has been a 10-year, 12-year process to build this giant entertainment complex, if you will. It's got a ski slope, it's got a water park. And when they got done sort of getting ready to open it, they realized that on a Sunday afternoon, there's Giant Stadium in the same complex with 60,000 people sitting there, all trying to get onto the New Jersey Turnpike at the same moment. And people could be coming and going from this mall, and they hadn't thought about signage. So they decided, okay, well, we'll just run fiber and put these signs up around the outside of the complex. And that was going to be a $2.5 or $3 million job. And they wound up using CBRS frequencies to direct people in and out of this complex by using CBRS frequency, saved them $2 or $3 million doing that. So CBRS can be used for signage, it can be used for data, it can be used for advertising, it can be used for voice. Wide open.
And then for me to sort of take that and understand that, does that simply mean that I can, and I say simply, I mean, I'm trying to bring it down for my own self, that can I interpret that to mean the way we use Bluetooth or a cell phone reception or things like that, it's a similar type of frequency that can be used for the same purposes?
It's similar, yes. It's, in other words, it's unlicensed like Wi-Fi. It's a more robust technology than Wi-Fi is, but at the end of the day, it's just like the frequency that AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile has, and it's utilizable. It can be utilized by commercial real estate and others to run a private network. And the equipment is fairly inexpensive compared to putting in one of these big hunking DAS systems. And it can act sort of as a DAS system or in conjunction with a DAS system. So it's really kind of turned the page for a lot of commercial real estate folks on how they're going to run their networks going forward.
So is a frequency able to be secured?
There's also a second batch of this frequency. So the first part of the band was given out unlicensed. And then there are auctions coming up, and again, because of the pandemic, it's been pushed. I believe it's July, that are called PAL license, PAL licenses. So you can also buy a frequency, and that's going to be given out county by county around the country. So you could have frequency that is yours that you've purchased. You can have unlicensed frequency, and you can also use those interchangeably. So you could have some licensed and some unlicensed and mix them together. So it's a really interesting situation where technology helped to use a new portion of the spectrum that wasn't dormant, it was being underutilized. And so it's been a great cooperation between the Navy, the FCC, these private folks, and it's really something we're very high on and we're talking about a lot because, again, as you mentioned earlier, there isn't a lot of understanding about this in the commercial real estate community about how it can benefit. Now, there's some folks like John Gilbert from Rubin Management has been at our events and talked about how he sees this, that CBRS may be the answer for him in his buildings, and he can run a private network across all of his buildings. And there are other people. I was having a conversation with a very, very, very large company, talking to the head of real estate about managing their campus. And we started talking about, well, you could use Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi 6 or mesh or 5G. I said, what about CBRS? And said, I'm not familiar with that yet. So that's where we think the educational outreach, that's our charter in the business, really helps people in the commercial real estate industry learn about this stuff.
And you answered my next question as you were talking there about, is this equivalent to 5G and should we think about it in the same way? And I think what you're saying is absolutely for a building and for a property owner, they can certainly use it the same way. Is that fair?
There's a twist there. That's a great question. There's a twist. You can run 5G over the CBRS frequencies. So 5G is a technology. CBRS is a frequency band. So if you put those two together, you got peanut butter, I've got chocolate. You can run 5G over that CBRS band. It's not a requirement, but that's where people will get additional speeds for their network when they begin to use 5G technology as that develops. So I'm a 5G skeptic at this point, that 5G is a terrific, terrific technology on paper. It's really the execution of it, how it will run, how it will unfold. And it is, if you got to think of 5G as a layer cake, you've got high band, mid band, and low band. The higher the frequency, the shorter the distance it travels, but the faster the speeds. The lower the frequency, the further it travels, but the lower the speeds. So it's a really interesting mix of, excuse me, of how do you get what you need from 5G? If you want high speeds, then you're going to have to suffer with a little bit less penetration, a little bit less distance that it goes. If you want it to travel very far, you're going to get good penetration potentially in buildings. You're going to get good travel distance, like with T-Mobile's network, but it's going to be faster, but not amazingly faster than 4G is today. So it's a really interesting balance of taking all those things, sweeping them into a pile and say, okay, I can use CBRS, I can run 5G over it. What equipment do I need? How do I do that? What core do I need to run it? Who can I use to complete my calls? Because the carriers aren't directly involved with CBRS yet. So if you have a CBRS network, you need to use a company like Geoverse to actually connect the calls for you. So it's, it's a really interesting mix of things. And that's where we're helping companies that are in the business talk to commercial real estate and tell their story so that commercial real estate guys can make an intelligent decision.
And is the product, would you recommend that the use of that frequency for property owners only, or people who have large campuses? Obviously, in many big cities, there are companies who have smaller offices. Is there a square footage requirement that you would see that it becomes viable, useful, worthwhile?
No, there's no limitation on that. But again, it has to make sense. If I have a 300 square foot office, I'm not necessarily going to go put a CBRS network in. But if I've got a, 18 square mile campus, CBRS could be a great way for me to cover that as a private network operator. So there are really interesting opportunities. But again, think about this entertainment complex that said, I got signs that are 2-3 miles away from each other. But as long as I've got a central broadcast point, I can make sure, and I can change those signs instantaneously instead of running a fiber. Because frankly, I already paved my parking lot. And now what I don't want to do is I don't want to have to dig up my parking lots. I can do this wirelessly. So
Right.
that's the beauty of it.
And then, just to sort of tying the conversation off, you said it's unlicensed. That's the element. There's one piece of it, it's unlicensed. Does that mean if the Navy need it, then, and you've installed this technology or this frequency, or you're leveraging it, then it goes away for that period of time? Is there a risk associated with that?
In other words, there's a preemption piece of it. So that if you were broadcasting, and I believe, again, I'm not a technologist, so I'm not an expert in this area, but I believe that if the Navy takes that preemption and uses that particular slice, it's as if you're using another number in your PBX. Oh, I'll just move to this other number. I'm not sure if that's happening automatically in this situation, or you'd need to redial in that setting. But so far from what I've seen, there hasn't been a lot of discussion about problems with the technology and interference and preemption and all that good stuff. I think it's yet to be seen how that will work. But based on the way they built the technology, I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. And I think they thought about that, over the years that it took the FCC to actually approve all this. So when, it was a triumph of multiple parties being able to get in there instead of fighting over it to figure it out and make it work.
Great. Thank you. Look, Rich, you're obviously you're very insightful. You're talking about a subject that I'm learning about all the time, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights and sharing your knowledge. And I look forward to further conversations to learn about other technologies as we progress through these coming weeks.
And thank you for having me. And again, I see us very similarly in our roles in what you've got with open source workplaces, so carrying the gospel of all these different technologies. And I see our mission as carrying the gospel of connectivity and what's going on out there, because all of the technology, the prop tech technology, and all of the great things that we're developing for technology kind of, really crash and burn if you can't connect them and you can't make them work from a connectivity standpoint. So, I tip my hat to you, because I think you're doing wonderful things, and I'm glad we got together and we're able to do this.
Thank you so much, Rich. I appreciate your time today. Take care.
Be safe.